My name is Q Phillips, and I am one of the co-founders, and I am the executive director of Community Frontline. We want to welcome you tonight to this informative session and panel discussion we're going to have as far as for social entrepreneurship. As an organization, we are so very excited to be able to start this new endeavor. Community Frontline is a brotherhood of men who are trying to do what we can to alleviate the sufferings that we see in our city, in our neighborhoods, in our community. And as always, those efforts by us are community led. So, what we have attempted to do when it comes to the formation of Community Frontline in the first place was sit down and listen to our community about the things that were affecting us, about the things that we thought needed to be fixed, and from that birth out this thing that we now do in this official nonprofit space, right of service of Community Frontline. And so tonight we're excited to be able to talk about this next leg of the journey of Community Frontline programming that we're adding to the space. And that is all surrounding social entrepreneurship. We are so excited about it. So tonight you'll have the opportunity to learn all about what that is, what social entrepreneurship is in the first place. How does that now affect our communities? How does this community work? How is this service? How does this change the game on the way that we're doing business and the way that we're implementing things? So tonight, and we got a few more people that's going to trickle in here in a moment. We're going to be able to hear from Professor Suzanne Smith. She is the one that's going to be leading the cohort that you'll be learning all about tonight that people are going to be involved in. She's the practitioner. And so she's going to drop a wealth of knowledge on us about this whole concept in the first place and talk about what it's going to mean to be a part of Community Frontline's social entrepreneurship endeavors. And then we have a wonderful panel guest. Gilberto Atade will be on. Benjamin Van, Sabrina Connor. You're going to be able to hear from these folks about their experiences with social entrepreneurship, their endeavors in embarking upon this, and the effects that it's been having on them and the way that they go about things. So we also will have an opportunity at the end of our time for Q&A. So we would love to be able to hear from you. So if you happen to be registered and on the chat with us, please feel free to put any of the questions that you have along the way into the chat, and we would definitely be grabbing those, and hopefully we can address those along the way or definitely at the end of our time together. And if you happen to be watching this on one of our platforms, feel free to put your comments and your questions in the chat, and we'll have someone monitoring to be able to pull those as well, because we want to make sure to provide as much information about this new endeavor that we have as possible. So like I said, there's a few more people that's going to trickle in, but we are very deeply excited for you to be able to understand more about what we're doing. So we have had in the past here community forums, as we do community forums every month to be able to showcase things that we feel the community needs to be able to know and adhere to, knowledge, things they need to be able to access, knowledge they need to be able to have. And one of those that we've had along the way was simply surrounding social entrepreneurship. And we had several people show up to be able to be a part of that evening and to be able to talk about what their views was on business, how they were conducting business, and what they were able to do. Now, from that, what we were able to see was people are genuinely interested in creating new ways of being able to do, right? Not just simply doing business as a standard in the way that it has always been done, but what is a way that is going to be truly effective for those who are impacted by said business, and how that business can have the impact that it's intended to have too, as far as being community centered and being able to do things around that. So we had wonderful attendance with that forum. We had people highly interested. They gave our co-founder and president Dante Williams, our director of development Ben Travis. They gave the idea of being able to bring what they were able to go through as a cohort here to Tarrant County. And so that's what we're going to be that's what we're going to be attempting to do, and we're going to do here within this next year within Community Frontline. And tonight, this is when we get to go through that information and get those involved who we're going to be. We're going to have a cohort of 40 folks that are going to be able to have this experience, this year-long experience alongside Community Frontline to really change the game on what this looks like. So outside of simply tonight and the information that everyone will be able to achieve, we also ask that you feel free to go to communityfrontline.com. One, just because we dope like that, but then two, also go to communityfrontline.com/changemakers, because that's where you're going to have all the information you're going to need as far as what this social entrepreneurship endeavor can look like. And so any questions that you'll be able to have, you'll be able to get there. You'll be able to contact us, but most of it will be there on the website for you to be able to access. And so I'm really excited about those who have decided to join us tonight. We got a few people that I'm loving to see. I want to give a shout out to Mama Gina for being in the building. What up, Mama Gina? Very happy to have you with us as well. I see my man Kent. Kent, it's always a pleasure for every time you join anything that's happening on Community Frontline, as well as Nelsie. That's my homie. Good to see you, right? So we got some good people that are always on the front line, that's always tapped in with us, that's trying to see what's going on with this. And we're hoping that you're going to be a part of what we are doing moving forward. And so we're getting to that time, about to get ready to begin, where we're going to have some information about the cohort within itself. I'm waiting on a couple more people to be able to log in. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for rocking with us. In the meantime, it does give me an opportunity to make a little plug for you. We got two things for Community Frontline that will be coming up that we would love for you to be able to be a part of. One, we are going to have community lunch. We have community lunch on Friday coming up, and we're going to Johnny's Chicken and Waffles. We're going to Johnny's Chicken and Waffles here in Fort Worth, place that I haven't had the opportunity to go before. But what we do when we have community lunch, y'all, we just simply pick a day, and we usually do it for a couple hour time period, 12 to 4. All right, I've got to keep my lights on there. We usually do it from 12 to 2 for a couple of hours, and it really is just an opportunity for the community to come out and support a local business, for one, so we can be able to make sure we pump the dollars back into our local Fort Worth community. And then it's a gathering space for people to be able to network, pick each other's brains, talk about what's going on in the world, talking about what's going on in the city, ways that we can collaborate, ways that we can partner, have partnerships. So we definitely want to invite everybody out to Johnny's Chicken and Waffles. If you follow our social media platforms, you'll be able to see any information you need there, but it'll be this Friday, the 19th, and it'll be from 12 to 2. Come out and hang with us. Come out and chill with us, because we love being a part of community alongside you all. And in addition to that, we also will be having next week our manhood conversation. Our manhood conversation will be taking place on September 24th. That'll be at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be at Blank Space, our location, Blank Space. And manhood conversation is for men to come out. And so we're inviting all men out to come have a conversation surrounding things that may be affecting us in our community, and ways for men to be able to collaborate on those. So in this particular one, we'll be talking about the excellence at work, right? Helping dudes to wrap ourselves around what it really means to be able to do so, and talking about that aspect of us being men in the workforce and what that looks like. So we are asking on Wednesday, September 24th, 7 o'clock at Blank Space. Tell your cousin, tell your uncle, your brother, your dad, your neighbor, right? I want all men to be able to come out so we can have a robust conversation surrounding what is happening in our community, and being able to equip one another with tools to be able to go be effective in our communities. Because anything that we see in our community that we don't like, it is up to us to be the catalyst to make that change, right? And we want to make sure that we're making it for all people that are involved within our community, right? So yes, so thank y'all very much for that. So please be on the lookout for everything else on our social media platforms. We want you to be able to hit our Instagram, hit our Facebook, hit all of our media platforms to be able to find out what's going on with Community Frontline, because we always want you to come out. But I need you Friday from 12 to 2 at Johnny's Chicken and Waffles, and I need you on Wednesday to be able to come through and come to manhood conversations, to be able to have that conversation with us. All right, good deal. So with that being the case, I want to be able to talk about now, kind of when we begin in a moment, we'll have kind of a one-on-one aspect of what social entrepreneurship is going to look like. What is the educational component of it? What does it look like for one to be involved in a particular, to be involved in this particular instance with social entrepreneurship? And we have a couple examples of what that looks like that we'll be able to get into in a little while, as far as how Community Frontline is doing so. like I said before, I gave a shout out to Mama Gina's, and Mama Gina is one of those partners that we're able to look to as far as showcasing that social entrepreneur lens of what this of how we want to be able to do this. So, Community Frontline is partnering alongside Mama Gina's restaurant, and now have a community kitchen. To where chefs, local chefs here in the city of Fort Worth, can have access to a commercial kitchen space, state of the art, beautifully conducted commercial kitchen space to be able to utilize, to be able to do catering, to be able to do meals, and has a little space in order to be able to do pop ups and things like that. So it's this way of, yes, it's business. Yes, there's money that could be made from it, but these are getting pumped right back into the community, getting pumped into community frontline organization, getting pumped to a business, a local business of Mama Gina. And it's something that's allowed to be able to give these chefs maybe space that they always haven't had the opportunity to be able to do. Is they're looking for ways to be able to uh, conduct what it is they have to do. So I'm gonna just do a quick front job real quick, just because I love her and I'm able to do it. Mama Gina, are you still on? Because I'm gonna call you to the front if you are. Do I have Mama Gina still on with us?
Yes, I'm still on.
Well, hello,
Yes.
good lady. How are you?
Hello, handsome. I'm good. I'm doing
Good.
good. Blessed and highly favored.
I love to hear you. You didn't know you was gonna be on here talking tonight, but I need you to get on here and talk for a little moment.
Okay,
because
no
I,
problem.
yeah, because I wanted to, because again, I think this is a beautiful example of what it looks like for social entrepreneurship to be actually in action. So, if you would just tell folks a little bit about our partnership and what you got going on in Mama Gina's Kitchen and how that affects the community.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I appreciate the collaboration. Um, I started out as a restaurant 5.5 years ago, and then due to circumstances beyond my control, I had to pivot. And after I prayed about it, and tried to figure out what I could do, then I was given some answers because my initial goal was to continue to be able to feed the community because I fed the homeless every single day that I was open. Every day they were able to come in and get a meal because I felt like that was my passion, that was my goal, and that was something that I needed to do. So once I closed the restaurant as a restaurant, then I just couldn't figure out, well, how can I continue my passion? How could I do that and still be effective and be a part of the community? And I so support what Community Frontline has been doing in our community for so long that I just wanted to continue to be a part of that. So I've partnered with Community Frontline, and together we are making a way for food entrepreneurs to be able to do their work and grow their business legally. Because a lot of businesses, they have been doing it, but they're doing it out of their home. And what I found out after talking with the health inspector who comes to me regularly, and she's just so supportive of what we are doing at Mama Gina's Family Kitchen, that I found out that they are going on to social media, and what one of the tools that they use is to find out who's cooking at home. And then they contact these people, and I know of two people for sure that have been given a $2,000 fine because they are not cooking out of their a commercial kitchen that has
Yeah.
been licensed and approved by the city and is following the state guidelines. At Mama Gina's Family Kitchen, excuse me, I'm so sorry. At Mama Gina's Family Kitchen, we are licensed by the city of Fort Worth. We have passed all of our inspections. Anybody can go and pull up our health inspection reports and see where we are. We do everything above the line, above the law, to make sure that we are showing and giving the opportunity for our vendors to actually, our partners rather, to actually, go into the community and provide food in the way of catering, meal prep, and even some of the partners that we have, because of my passion of feeding the homeless, they are also feeding the homeless when they do their pop-ups. For example, Pat's Kitchen, which is a great partner that we've had now for a few months, because we've only been doing this since April. She has some of her customers who come in and buy meals for from the pop-up, but then the people that I was feeding on a regular basis, they say, "Oh my God, Mama Gina's back. So can I go in and get some food?" Well, they come in and talk to her, and she provides them with meals as well. So it's pushing it forward and continuing what we're trying to do and what we're trying to promote in the community to
Yeah,
make sure that our unhoused people are fed, and to make sure that our entrepreneurs are doing the right thing. And I've talked to a couple of people in Community Frontline. Like I said, we're in collaboration together. And after the first of the year, we're going to be putting together some training for these entrepreneurs so that they know exactly what it is they need to do in order to be legal. So if they want to go out and have their own business and open their own brick and mortar, they'll know exactly what they need to do, how to cost their food out so that they make money. And they're not just coming up with something off the top of their head, which is what I did to begin with, because I had
sure.
no. So I'm just grateful that I have the opportunity to be that catalyst in our community through company for community frontline, that they are allowing me and helping me to go forward. There's so much I don't know. There's a lot I do know, but together we are making it work.
That is absolutely fantastic. Cannot thank you enough. We're blessed to have you, be in partnership with you. But that's exactly it. That embodies the spirit of what we're talking about with the social entrepreneurship. How are we doing business well, and how are we impacting the community as we're doing it? How are we making sure that the community is impacted through the service that's being received, and how are we making dollars and everything work back for the community and providing what it is the community needs as well. So that's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Mama Gina. And so let's get started with tonight. We have Suzanne Smith. Suzanne, what up?
Hi, how are you guys? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly. We can hear you
Yes,
perfectly.
ma'am.
So I want to give you the opportunity to take us through this for a little bit because we've been talking about this concept of social entrepreneurship and talking about this cohort, all these things. But and we were able to see a tangible example of what it looks like in action with Mama Gina. But I want to give it to you as you're going to be coordinating this educational component for this. What is this entrepreneurship? Take us through a little what this whole thing is going to, this journey is going to be like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for letting me zoom into the Fort Worth Tarrant County community. It is one of my favorite places to come to. And so I couldn't be more excited that the third location that we're going to be doing the social entrepreneurship certificate is right next door. I live in Dallas, but I love, to me, Dallas and Fort Worth are like brothers and sisters. So I love the fact that, we're heading over to Fort Worth and bringing this. And I just can't thank Community Frontline enough, as well as the alumni of the SMU program. Gilberto's one of them, Alyssa's one of them, for really being the energy behind that. That's true social entrepreneurship. When you see something you really like, you figure out how do you bring it to your community. And so I'm so thrilled that we're able to do that. Can everybody see my slides? Okay. So let me start first with a story of how I actually came to social entrepreneurship. So I don't know how many of you can relate to this, and I'd love to see in the chat if you can relate to this. So do thumbs up or something along those lines. But I think that for me, I had done work about 10 years in the social space, and I just felt like I kept trying to push a rock up a hill. And I kept felt like I kept falling short, and I kept feeling like there had to be a better way. There had to be a more streamlined process to make sure young people got in after school programs and small businesses got started and whatever issue area you deeply care about. It just felt like it was so much harder than it really needed to be. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. And so, whether you're in government and you're trying to get a great government program going, you're a small business owner and you're trying to make things happen in your community, revitalize your community, or you're a nonprofit and you have an issue area that you deeply are engaged with, and you want to do more with it, get more money, get more resources, serve more people. So I think many of you here can relate, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation one on one in the panel to talk about that. And I almost felt like I about wanted to give up because I'm like, this is just too hard. This system just makes it too hard. And I was lucky enough that I was able to travel to New York City and was attended a session by Peter Drucker. And at the time, he was still alive. And many of you may know that he is kind of a management science expert in the for-profit space. But towards the end of his life, he actually spent more time in the nonprofit space and actually wrote a lot of books on the management of nonprofits. And I was lucky enough, he was no longer presenting directly, but he was doing these conferences and he would sit in the back of the room and listen to the stuff that was going on. And I remember being, a late 20 something passionate person. And I get up and say something very similar to what I just said. And I got a tap on my shoulder at the very end of the session. And they said, well, there's a happy hour later and Peter would like to meet you. And I was like, first of all, I was like, Peter, who are we talking about? I was like, oh, Peter Drucker. And so I go up to this happy hour. And again, I'm like a rural Texan and I'm in this like, big story building in New York City. And I'm like intimidated out the wazoo with all these people and the fanciness of New York City. And so I go to this happy hour and I end up spending about 45 minutes talking to Peter. And he finally said at the very end, I said, am I crazy with all of this? And he goes, no, you're not crazy at all. You just haven't found your people. And I said, well, where are my people? And he goes, well, have you heard about this concept called social entrepreneurship? And I go, no, tell me more. And he said, well, there's this whole group of people at Duke and at Harvard who basically have said the exact same thing as you, academics at the time, it was just academics, and said the charity model is effectively broken or it is outdated, and we needed a better toolkit. And we needed to upgrade our toolkit. And so he actually sent me Greg D's book, Enterprising Nonprofits, in the first class. You guys are going to hear more about him. Essentially, the father of social entrepreneurship, who grew up in a, kind of a very rural part of Appalachia in Kentucky. And essentially, grew up in academia. And he came up with this idea that basically said the way in which we're operating is not solving the problems at the scale at which they exist. The fact that nonprofits are relegated over here and businesses here and governments over here, if we're really going to solve for whatever problem you care the most about, they've got to come together. There's got to be cross-sector collaboration. We've just got to get smarter with the toolkit. And that's really all social entrepreneurship is this really enhanced toolkit. It's also this greater level of understanding that we're not in this alone, and that the way we actually solve the most messy, difficult social issues are coming together, cross-sector collaboration. It's not nonprofits' responsibility to fill the gap of every community need. It's not businesses' responsibility to do everything. It's not government's responsibility to solve for it. We all have to come together in a collective strategy and through coordination, and we've got to really put resources towards it. There aren't any silver bullets to the issues that we're talking about. These are all messy, difficult, complicated, complex issues. And we need our brightest and smartest people thinking about this together. And that's really all social entrepreneurship is essentially a new way. So that for me, it was a new way 15 years ago. It'll now be the new way for many of you. But it's just a discipline around thinking about social issues in a new and different way. So for those people who are here that are nonprofit people, to me, it's just an elevated way of looking at the community issue. It's also a less isolating way of thinking about your issue areas. We're going to really encourage you to link arm to arm with other nonprofits, but also link arm to arm with business and government to make sure we're in this together, and that what we are doing is sustainable and is scalable. For those of you in business, we're really going to challenge you to say, are you using every aspect of your resources for the greater good? How are you treating your employees? What are you doing as far as your environmental footprint? How are you actually sourcing for minority women-owned businesses to make sure we're elevating people who are doing great things in the local community? Maybe even incorporating as a benefit corporation. In government, we're going to ask, are you as innovative as you need to be? Are you thinking about things in the 20th century way, or are you harnessing all of the technology that we now have in the 21st century to make sure street lights and street paving and all the things that city services should be doing, libraries, parks, etc., broadband, is at the disposal of citizens? And are you thinking as innovatively as you possibly could? And you're lucky in Fort Worth that you did have a chief innovation officer, and Carlo and I know each other really well. And so Fort Worth has already got that innovative electricity in their city hall of like, what can we do to improve civic life? So that's really all social entrepreneurship is just kind of a new and elevated way of thinking. It's also a way for us to come together and link arm to arm and say, we're no longer by ourselves in doing this. As I say in class, transformation only happens in community. We have to do this work together. We also have to be real about what's working and what's not working, and make sure that we're honest about those things. So I think what I'm going to walk through just really quickly now that you kind of heard my story, and I'm anxious to hear all of your stories too, because I think we all come at this through unique perspectives. It's really the definitions behind some of the stuff you're going to learn. I'm going to give you a sneak peek into what the class is all about so you can decide to sign up and know with great assurance that you're going to be getting the best toolkits that exist right now. But we're also going to challenge you in this course to improve the toolkits because we're still learning. We're still in the pioneering phase of social entrepreneurship. And every one of us elevates each other's game. I'm a better social entrepreneur because I've spent time with Gilberto and Dante and Alyssa and Hugh and Carlo because we all elevate each other. We learn the strengths from everybody. But let me just walk you through a couple of definitions and a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the stuff you'll be getting in class. So one of the big areas that I think oftentimes people get confused by, and let me just pull the slides up. Can you guys see the definitions now?
No, we're still on your starting slide.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me get that pulled up correctly. Hold that thought. Here we go. I'm resuming my slideshow. Let's make sure that I'm pushing it forward. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me stop the share because I think that was the problem. Be thinking of your best question or your story that you want to share as I try to get technology to work towards the direction I need it to.
And as Suzanne does that, please feel free to make sure you throw any questions you have along the way in our chat if you happen to be on our call with us. But even if you're watching on our social media platform, please make sure any comments and questions you may have, we'll have someone monitoring for us to be able to answer those particular things. So thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Can you see social definitions now? All right. Technology's working for me. All right. Fantastic. All right. So one of the big things that I think sometimes we get conflicted by, and unfortunately, sometimes we can spend too much time on the definitions, is what is innovative, what is entrepreneurship, and what is enterprise. And so this is one of the first things we start with. And honestly, I'm a big tent girl. Anybody who wants to come in and create seismic social change to me is a social entrepreneur. But we do have some very specific ways we want to do social entrepreneurship better, and try to improve upon what we've learned the last 75 years in the social space. And not just here in the United States, but things we've learned from Australia and the UK and other places. So when I think about social innovation, I always think about it as the idea. So social innovation is really this idea that we want to create something that could be better. And what's interesting about innovation is oftentimes people conflate innovation with invention. I want to create something new. So I've got a cell phone here, and I am old enough to remember when cell phones were nothing. Like I basically had to dial up people on a rotary phone. There was nothing as a cell phone. I remember the phones in cars that people had before there were cell phones. And so at one point, this phone was very innovative. It's no longer innovative, but what's innovative is how the phone has evolved over time. No one is going out and inventing a brand new cell phone. What we're doing is we're creating a better version of the cell phone from time to time to time. And that's really what we want to do in the social space. We want to model ourselves off of what we've learned from for-profit innovation that has really been our calling card, is we look at existing practices in the social space, and we figure out how can we do them that much better. And that's what we call leapfrog innovation. So we don't create things from scratch anymore, just like your grandmother, used to create things from scratch. We go and look at the various recipes that people have, and we might customize it for a specific circumstance. And so that's really what social innovation is. It's about the idea, and it's about that creation process. The other thing I would say about innovation that I think is critically important is we've got that leapfrog innovation, but we also want to use things like phones for innovative purposes. So we are agnostic in the nonprofit, in the social space, in government to say innovation has to be about a thing or about a product. But what could be really innovative is what the phone now does for us. So if many of you have traveled outside of the United States into a developing country, you now know they completely leapfrogged the rotary phone and landline phones, and all they use is cell phones. And what now amazing social entrepreneurs are doing is leveraging the fact that most people have a cell phone, and now they're banking those individuals and they're shifting to online banking. Or in places where rural communities and developing countries where there is low access to doctors, they're doing remote healthcare. So people have access to doctors, and that is incredibly innovative. Taking an existing resource like a cell phone, or taking an existing technology and deciding how do I then do it in an innovative way for a brand new group. And so that's really where social innovation gets its ideas. It can be a practice, it can be a process. And so what we want to do in the class is really teach you how to supercharge your creative and innovation skills. And it's not just the brainstorming idea. Innovation is not just about how many ideas you create. It's also that narrowing process of how do those ideas collide to create better ideas to make sure you then get that transformative breakthrough effect. And so we'll talk to you about the role that divergence as well as convergence has in finding the best possible idea and the idea that has the greatest likelihood of being successful. The research suggests that only about 20% of ideas are viable. So we'll actually put you through the rigorous tests that you need to do as an entrepreneur. And I'm guilty of this too. Every place I go, I have a lot of ideas, but not all of my ideas are innovative, or could be actually viable or feasible. And what may be viable and feasible in Fort Worth may not be viable and feasible in Dallas. And so we've got to kind of customize it to our unique environment. And so that's also the process of innovation, is really customizing that idea for the context. So innovation is about the idea. Entrepreneurship is about the person, the mindset. And so today you could walk away from this presentation and say, I'm a social entrepreneur, and we will have considered that success. And that's really important, because to me, the moment Peter Drucker said, you're a social entrepreneur, I was like, oh, that's what I am. This is who my tribe is. These are the people I need to hang out with, the people who are unsatisfied with the status quo, the people who want to push the boundaries of the social space, the people who want to link arm to arm with business and government to do the work. So it's really this mindset. And truthfully, it's this entrepreneurial mindset that we need to think differently. We need to push the envelope. We need to speak truth to power. We need to make sure that we're doing things that are proximate to the communities and not doing things to communities, but doing things with community. And we need to do things that are sustainable. So there's a lot of principles around being a social entrepreneur, and we'll put those into practice in the certificate program. And we're so blessed that we've gotten funders to actually help us not just learn about social entrepreneurship, but put those into practice through the community projects. And so I'm hoping Q and Community Frontline will give you a little bit of a sneak peek of where that potentially could go. But I'm thrilled that you guys have transplanted the certificate into Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and have also chosen, in my opinion, to do the A+ job and actually say, we're going to actually do projects together. We're not going to just talk about social entrepreneurship. We're going to walk the walk together, which I think is so stellar. And then social enterprise, I think this is the one most people think of when they think of social entrepreneurship. You know, if you bought Girl Scout cookies, if you go to a Y gym, or you go to Salvation Army in the thrift store, that's a social enterprise. And they're basically trying to run their mission at the same time they're trying to make money to support their mission. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, just because we're called nonprofits does not mean we can't make profit. It's actually the most terribly named thing, I think, in the English vernacular. And so we want people to be socially entrepreneurial. We want people to create social enterprises. And I'm going to give you so many case studies where the mission was furthered because they had that social enterprise. And now we live in a world where it's not just nonprofits starting social enterprises. For-profit companies are saying, I want to start originally as a social enterprise. where I want to bake the social part in, not as an afterthought, not as a feel good, but I want them to dovetail together and make sure everything I'm doing from a business perspective is doing well in the community. Um, so that's really the fun and the disruptive part of the last 20 years is now I see more and more of my for-profit social entrepreneurs who are basically saying, I wouldn't have it any other way. And that's why we love having the class of people who are nonprofits, business, and we love having the government and philanthropists all in one room so they collide together and they think about all the different ways they could work together. So those are some of the social definitions. Q, do you have a bit of time just to see if there's any questions just on the definitions before I kind of wrap up with just a little bit of methodology and then I'll turn it back over to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if we have any questions, this is absolutely the time to be able to have some of those. The only thing that we've had come up so far is about if we're going to be able to have this information shared with us. And the answer to that is yes. So one, this presentation within itself will be shared on our platforms, on our website. And then, yeah, and definitely if you're a part of this cohort, you're going to be getting all these goods. So we definitely want you to be able to get it there. So yes, all pertinent information will be there, but please go to communityfrontline.com/changemakers. That's where you're going to be able to have all the information that you need from there. So that's about the only question we have pertinent at this moment, and we'll let you go ahead and take it into that next session.
Yeah, and I would just follow up too. That actually reminds me, that question provides me a good jumping off point of also one of the principles of social entrepreneurs is we don't believe in intellectual property. And so no one owns a community, no one owns a solution. So social entrepreneurs, by their very nature, share everything. So not only will you get these slides, but I hope you use them. I believe imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. My only request is if you improve upon them, you need to let me know so that I can use it myself. And I get improvements all the time from my students. And I think that's the best compliment they can give me is they send me, I used this slide, but I changed it this way. And I'm like, your slide's better. I'm now using your slide. And so that's what we want. We want people to continue to push the boundaries of the work. And that's what I think good social entrepreneurs do. So let me just give you just some quick thoughts around the practice and in the class. And I just wanted to kind of showcase each section because you're going to get a full class on each of these, but just some tips. So for those of you who are already practicing social entrepreneurs, I think these can be just some tips to think about and some of the things that we're going to consistently talk about in the class. So the first is this idea of social alchemy. And so this was a concept that I came up with to really help people understand the progress of an idea. So how do you start with an idea and what is the holy grail of the end? Like where you are the ultimate success. And really, as we think about it, we kind of think about it through the lens of innovation, impact, and scale. And what we've learned about ideas that have actually moved the needle in this country. And I know it's hard in this moment to think, have we really moved the needle on much? But the truth is, in our history, we moved the needle on a lot of things. The fact that I'm here says we've moved the needle a lot around women's rights. The fact that, we're here in community together, the fact that we're here on Zoom together, all of those things mean we've actually moved a lot significantly. Are we far enough? No, but that's the work we've got to do. We've got to roll up our sleeves and go farther. And that's what Americans do, roll up our sleeves and go farther. So that's really what social alchemy is about, is that we really looked at every social solution that had really gotten to a place of being solved. So think polio, possibly drunk driving, tobacco kind of fall into that. Like we're sort of solving them to the extent that we can solve them. There are other ones that I think fall into that category. And really looking first at the innovation part. And I talked a lot about innovation, so I'll just underscore a couple of things. The big thing we as social entrepreneurs try to resist the temptation of, and it is so tempting. Anytime I see a problem, instantly I'm like, they should do this, they should do that, they should do this. Why aren't they doing that? Like that's just the typical entrepreneurial response is I always think I could do something better. But true social entrepreneurs are disciplined and say, where's the data? What is the problem really saying? Have we talked to the people that we're trying to serve before they instantly jump to the solution or instantly decide which solution they should move forward with? They gather all the facts, they try to resist the assumptions. So this is where I talk about social entrepreneurship is really the blending of passion and discipline. Passion alone is not going to get you very far, but the passion and discipline, like you're unstoppable. And so that's really what innovation is really about, is involving the people that you're trying to serve. It needs to be their idea as much as you possibly can. And then you want to pilot because nothing is absolute at the very beginning. So pilot as soon as possible when you innovate. Under improve and impact, as you guys know, in God we trust, all others must bring data. That has been a shift from the 20th century to the 21st century. It doesn't matter if you're in government or business or in nonprofit, we all are having supply data to prove that we've actually created impact. And the data really does show that the more you talk about your impact, the more people will gravitate towards you, the better your story gets, and the more funding you're going to attract. That's the flywheel effect. So we also are going to double down on how do you talk about impact? And we're going to talk about it from the lens of how do you tell an impactful story, but also how do you deliver the impact? How do you have logic models? How do you really make sure you create a culture of curiosity in your organization? So that's really the impact side. And our argument around impact being so important is that for us in the social space, and it doesn't matter if you're a government or nonprofit, and I'd argue this is equally important in business, impact is our bottom line. We're not looking at profit. We're looking at this bottom line of impact. So the only way other people can judge us of did we actually use resources properly is actually saying, did you actually create impact? Did you make a difference in the people that you're serving? And you've got to measure that. And you measure it through qualitative and collecting stories, and you measure it through quantitative and trying to get that data to the extent you can. So we're going to be really putting you through your paces as far as where you are on measuring your impact and telling your story. And then lastly, scale. I call scale the holy grail because when you're able to take something to scale, it exists beyond you. And so one of the other things that's really important as us is for social entrepreneurs is there's no credit in this field. At the end of the day, the credit goes to the success of the actual thing that goes to scale. And hopefully there is somebody who helped invent it, somebody who actually ushered it along. But the true success is that organization continues to exist without that founder being involved. True success is that idea gets transplanted in another community and it actually bears fruit. And it didn't have to have the same hands that actually started it in another community be involved. That's true success of an idea, at least. And so part of what we want to do in the scale part is also dismiss the idea or the assumption that it has to be bricks and mortar, that I have to go out and transplant my organization, almost like a franchise model, like McDonald's, to individual communities, that you could actually see a great idea in Memphis or a great idea in Denver and say, you know what, that could work in Fort Worth. I'm going to bring it to Fort Worth, put in our little special sauce because we need stuff a little bit customized for our area, and it also bears fruit. And we want that. So we want to create guides, we want to create templates, we want to create working documents that allow for that to happen. And this is where we get to the intellectual property part. Everybody should be sharing their ideas with each other. Everybody should be improving upon each other. And really, we want fruit to be all over the place. And we want there to be success everywhere. And that's the true definition of scale. So we did spend a lot of time, I think, in the early century looking at bricks and mortar. I think we've realized the folly of that. We can't continue to have a ton of bricks and mortar nonprofits, kind of coming to individual communities. It's much better to take the existing nonprofits, the existing government agencies, figuring out how do we transplant good ideas into the existing context of people who know that existing community, and then they're able to usher it into its full fruition. Just a much better use of resources. So that's kind of a little bit about scale. So that's really the last thing I wanted to talk about. You'll see that this is kind of the trifecta of innovation, impact, and scale. This also is the sequence that we take the course. We first start with kind of strategy and kind of grounding you, and then we get into innovation and impact and scale, and we do a very big deep dive. I'm also available for office hours. We're going to have the best, smartest faculty in each of these areas as well. So it's not just me. You're going to have people from TCU and SMU and different places coming in, Pepperdine coming in to Fort Worth to kind of teach you. And then you're going to be walking the walk. You're going to be doing these great community projects. You're going to get to try this for yourself. All right, Q, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Are there any questions that they have before I transition?
Absolutely, yeah, because we want to bring in these wonderful panelists we have to get some
Yes.
of their expertise and their insights on this as well. But there is one question before I bring them in, and that question is: can you define logic model?
Great question. And we'll send this out. That's a great question. So, yes, I did make the mistake of using a word we use in class that may not be familiar to everybody. So, what I'm sure you're familiar with is, and maybe you can identify with this, is you probably have a grandparent or a aunt or an auntie who has a secret recipe for something. And I had a grandmother who had this amazing Southern biscuit recipe, and she made it from her head, and she made it every Christmas, and no one wrote down the recipe. And to this day, we debate what she did to make the biscuits the way they are. We never wrote it down. And what that also meant is that we weren't able to perfect on it. So I don't know about you, but every Thanksgiving, I perfect upon my apple pie to make my apple pie just that much better in that particular year and try different things. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. That's all a logic model is. It is a recipe for how you put together your social program, your social service, your business. What inputs, so in the case of my grandmother, her flour, her lard, all those things that she put into the biscuit, what activities she did. So, how hot was the oven? What did she put it in? Then the output, which is lots of really good biscuits. The outcome is very happy grandkids who wanted the recipe. That's really all it is. And so it's just an opportunity for all of us in the social space to say, don't take your secret recipe to the grave. We need to put it out there. We need to share it. We need to give it away. And we need to improve upon ourselves every single year. Good question.
Right. Absolutely. And so what you're getting right now is basically just scratching the surface. It's going to get you're going to get so much more information to be able to take with you, to be able to analyze your own business, your place in this, how this happens. And we'll talk about that secret sauce that only community frontline could bring to this thing as well. So I see we have a few more questions. We're definitely going to get to those and make sure we get those answered. But I do want to take the opportunity to bring in these powerhouse folks that we got to be able to speak to their experience tonight. Like I said before, we have Gilberto Atade, we have Benjamin Van, we have Sabrina Connor. All of them have been a part of this or know what's going on with this particular aspect of social entrepreneurship, and we want to be able to meet them and hear their lens on this. So, with that being the case, Gilberto, I'm going to start with you, my man. I'm going to ask if you would just briefly introduce yourself, and then once you introduce yourself, man, I would love for you to talk about why'd you apply to the course in the first place, and what were some of your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, so my name is Gilberto Ataide. I'm the VP of Operations for the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And I learned about this class a year, 2 years ago. It's been a little bit of time. But I joined the class when I was actually starting another Hispanic chamber closer to Collin County, the Greater North Texas Hispanic Chamber. And so I needed resources in building the organization. I needed to understand anything from fundraising to marketing. And so when I was going through the class, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was that I did get to learn from my peers a lot, and kind of to what Suzanne mentioned, learning from every single sector, I thought was really important, especially for a chamber of commerce. But every week we had a class. We had lunch with a couple of the students that were in it, and because it was a great mix of nonprofit, government, and even some for-profit organizations, we talked about issues that were impacting our community, and it was such a in-depth conversation because we all approached the same problem and we all gave our perspective on the challenges that each one of us were facing. And so it just gave me a broader sense of the issue that was at hand. And it kind of helped me understand that every time I was approaching a problem, I should always reach out to a partner. I should always reach out to everyone in every different sector just to understand how we can all solve this problem together. And so to me, that was invaluable because it was really like a hands-on experience. Throughout the class, I was learning. And after the class, we kept in touch. And so I think it was one of the biggest changes in mindsets, but it was also one of the best things I could have ever learned.
Absolutely, man. You talking about taking that learning outside of the four walls is exactly what we're gonna want people to be able to do. So, but yeah, I'm gonna have a couple more questions for you, Gilberto, but I want to go ahead and bring in Benjamin Van as well. And Benjamin, I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself And Benjamin, if you would, after you introduce yourself, man, will you tell us an example of when you've seen this social entrepreneurial mindset really create impact?
Definitely appreciate you, Q, and everybody joining this call today. It is for the parents out there. It is that hour of time. So I'm over here navigating. So if you hear anybody in the background, they bust in, just look at me. Don't pay attention to them. But excited to be here and speak to you all today. My name is Benjamin Van. I'm the president and CEO of Impact Ventures. We are a nonprofit organization that is working to close the wealth gap through inclusive entrepreneurship and equitable capital access. We have a cohort going on in Fort Worth right now. Some of you probably know or have heard of some of our programs going on right now, our capital readiness program in Fort Worth. And we're based in Dallas, but serve across the North Texas market, providing entrepreneur training, but also capital access, which is the biggest component for any type of entrepreneur, whether you're building a social enterprise, a Main Street business or a venture, backed business. Capital is I like to say, it's the oxygen, right, to any business. But from a mindset perspective, I'll say myself, in my personal journey, I think I heard Suzanne say a little bit earlier. A lot of social entrepreneurs, especially early on, don't label themselves as social entrepreneurs. They're really people who have this peculiar, I would say, burning desire that grows over time to the point where you can no longer ignore it. And it's so loud. It's so loud. And when I say loud, not in noise, but in passion, it comes out. It oozes through your pores. It consumes your life, your thoughts, right? Because you're so passionate around this idea, around creating this very unique change, in your community. And I think, from the perspective of what I've seen, some of the challenges, I'll talk about some of the challenges around social entrepreneurship mindsets as you grow through whatever your solution is. I would say it's definitely something that morally you kind of have to take an introspective view of, am I in this for money or am I in this to do good? And there's a method to do both, right? But I think every social entrepreneur has had that, that's that meeting in the mirror with themselves, that says, what is the calling on my life? What is the true purpose on my life? And it may not be tied to becoming a millionaire, right? And that's okay. But knowing where your true purpose is and how do you stay focused on that and not get sidetracked by the money opportunities. Not saying that money is bad. You need money to be a social entrepreneur. Like that's why I created my social enterprise, because I had a unique vantage point and skill set in the world of finance, and I knew how capital worked, but I didn't see capital come into communities that looked like me, right? And so I got so obsessed with the problem that I decided to finally do something about it, and then bring others along, right, so that they could own the solution, right? So, now 8 years in, I don't feel like I own the solution anymore. The community owns the solution, right? The community informs the solution. I didn't set out to create a CDFI. I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to create a CDFI. Suzanne knows, because she was a part of this one in the early days, and I never said, I want to create a CDFI. It literally came by evolution, iteration, listening to the community. Everything that we've implemented has been because of someone said they need something, right? And so always having I like to say, your ear to the streets, or always listening and designing with community in mind, is always going to be important to what you're doing, to know if you're meeting the market or you're meeting the moment, right? Is having that listening ear, and always listening to what the community wants versus what you think they want, right? So I'll stop there.
Nah, that's perfect, man. And you speaking exactly to the community frontline way. That's us in a nutshell, man. What did the community want? And activating around. So, and yeah, Benjamin, I don't think no human has ever woke up and said, I want to create a CDFI. So yeah. Well, we're glad you did.
See these graphics, half of them was from that, and half was from these kids.
We appreciate you, man. And we want to make sure to get to my homie over here, Sabrina. Sabrina Khan, I want to bring you into the conversation, man. And I ain't forgot, I still owe you something. I got you, homie. Don't you worry about it. I got your back. So, but with that, it is an honor to have you with us tonight. And I want you to do the same as far as being able to briefly introduce yourself. But I also want you to share what you see as some of the values social entrepreneurship brings to the social sector as well.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Sabrina Connor. I am the Community Impact Program Officer for the North Texas Community Foundation. I've been there for all of 4 months now. And so I participated in the social entrepreneurship certification program I completed last year. And at the time, I was in a different role and really in a phase in my career where I was really trying to figure out what's next. In my civic life, I am the co-founder of a couple of organizations, and I've always had a passion for giving back and creating organizations that help to empower my community. And I really wanted to do that on a full-time basis and really didn't know how. And now that I see that, it was foreshadowing for what was next in my career, which was the community foundation, the missing link. And so I saw what I really appreciate about the program is just it was a lot of light bulbs and connecting the dots and really being able to think differently, as I was at the time working in the behavioral health field, not quite nonprofit, but still public service, but just the idea of thinking innovatively to address social issues or social things that are going on in the community, especially with the ever changing dynamics, whether it's political or funding or whatever the case may be, but really providing key tools and resources to really start thinking about, okay, think about the assets that you have, the partners, the players that's within the community, and what are some creative ways to address the problem versus the traditional ways, but also adding that business aspect of it. So because the reason why a lot of people start nonprofits is not because they have the business acumen, it's because they have a passion to address something, right? And so I think with the program, it adds the tools that's necessary to make your organization or business sustainable as well, because it's about now working in the community foundation. I could say the benefit is it helps leaders to be able to tell their story, because it's really on them to really share why their organization exists, why they're doing the work, and then the impact. So you got to have the data, but you also have to have the ability to tell the story of the data, to get people along with your mission, to invest in your vision, your dream, but also to help you to encourage, because a lot of times the nonprofits are using volunteers. It might be one paid staff or two part-time staffers. So it's a lot of dependent on the community and volunteers to do the work. So it's providing you with those skills to keep people motivated, keep thinking innovatively, not being knocked down when funding changes, or things that are the climate changes, and creating creative ways and being more collaborative in your approach and being innovative in that way. So I definitely think, and I've been encouraging people, like, if this program's opportunity comes about, I know a lot of great people doing great things in the community. I think it's an added benefit to help to propel their work forward. So
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. You can have the data, but you got to be able to allow that data to be able to tell the story, or you have to be able to tell the story of the data. Couldn't agree more. And I appreciate that so much. And so I want real quick just to let you all know, again, you can go to communityfrontline.com/changemakers. And we're going to have 40 participants within this cohort when we began this at the beginning of the year. We already had folks who began to apply, so we want to give you that opportunity. But even since we started this call, we've had 3 more people to come on and apply. So we're up to about 25 or so applicants already in this, and we ain't even really launched it, y'all. So we want to make sure you get those applications in, because we want this to be a cross section of the community in a vast way, so that we're getting this message out that we're helping change the game when it comes to your business and how we're doing business, and the community impact that we're having. So just wanted to make sure we provided that update. Proud of y'all, and y'all keep on pushing. Come on, keep getting in there, because we want to be able to do this together. So Benjamin, let me bring you back in real quick, man, because you have that investor lens that I want to tap into for a moment. And so with that lens of yours, what makes social enterprise strong or compelling when you're talking about dollars, access to capital, all those things you were talking about?
Yeah, I think one thing in our economy that most people, actually, I was speaking at Dallas Startup Week, and I had asked everyone in the room if they were an impact investor, and I think only 2 people out of the, I think maybe 60 something people that were in the room And I kind of flipped the script on him. I was like, I'm actually disappointed in all of you because all of you all should be considering yourself as impact investors. And I say that because we are living in a time where you can no longer afford not to be. And when I say not to be, I mean no longer oblivious or flat out ignoring the impact, positive or negative, that your business is creating in the community, right? I'll give a prime example of Target right now, right? When Target launched its rollback of DE&I, right? Ignoring the impact and its consumer base, right? We've seen that Target has lost multi-billion dollars since they've announced that, right? And so how I define impact within a business, I do it two ways, right? There's operating impact. Well, let me start with product service impact because that's the most common that people know. Product service impact. We've all heard of Tom Shoes, right? The 1-for-1 model, buy one, you give someone away for free. um, that model of creating product service impact is one way of defining impact. Another one is operating business, and that's really looking at the internal infrastructure of the business, right? Is it employing a particular group that's disadvantaged or underrepresented, right? Are you paying livable or thriving wages within the business? Are you measuring the local impact you're having by supporting vendors who are also small businesses or underrepresented businesses? So it comes down to this double bottom, almost triple bottom line impact. And so from an investor standpoint, I think it's good to know that you're investing in a business that not only is doing well financially, right? It's profitable, it's making money, it's being able to be solvent on all its debts, but also is doing well in the community, meaning it's operating as a good citizen, right? A good corporate citizen. Right. And so I think every business, no matter how big or small, you could have a donut shop all the way to Starbucks, right? There's something you can do in your business to create positive impact in your community. It could be as small as giving back 10% of your proceeds. We see that a lot, right? It's very common.
Do you mind if I weigh in and give an example, Ben, of that, a local business that I think did a great job of that?
Yeah.
So Ben and I have been on many panels together, so we always like to kind of go back and forth. So we talk about Target, we talk about Walmart, and unfortunately, what that means sometimes is small businesses feel like you need some person who's responsible for this. And so I always give the example, and this is a true example. But there is an organization or a small business that was in one of the different sessions that Ben and I were at, and he owned a chain of like oil change facilities. And he came up to me afterwards and he's like, I really want to do this stuff, but I don't really know how to give back. And I basically then listed, I'm like, you could give away oil changes for silent auctions. You could go to every after school program that has a van and you could give them oil changes. You could serve on a board. You could actually work with other people who are in the auto industry to also donate back to the space. And he actually did it. He followed up with me, and this is the story he told me. He said, I did do that. I found out there's a Boys and Girls Club right down the street from me. And we actually they had a van and we actually did their oil changes. Those oil changes led to the director of that program saying, you know what, it'd be really good for you to teach our kids car care. So then they actually were teaching the kids car care, so learning how to do oil changes themselves, learning, how to look at your fluids, all those kind of things. Then they decided they were going to actually participate in North Texas Giving Day. And they actually, as all the people came in to get oil changes, and you're a captive audience, right? Like you're sitting there, there's nothing you can do. They were actually talking about the Boys and Girls Club and the different after school programs they were supporting. And they actually did increase the amount of money that they actually raised as a result. Then the gentleman actually did become on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. And so he now actually believes that it has actually helped them from an employee retention perspective. And it actually has helped from a customer service point of view, because there's people like me who walk into when any one of the different oil changes, it's a commodity. There isn't really any difference between an oil change. And I said, and people say, I'm going to actually come get my oil changed at your place because you're giving back to the community. So it's actually helped him from a bottom line perspective, even though that's not really why he did it in the first place. And so that's a great example of the donut shop example on a real life level. And he actually is now a huge proponent in this community and getting all of his other, tire change, all of these different things to get them to do more in the community because he doesn't have a lot of money. but he can provide something that really helps those local nonprofits. And so I just wanted to give a really tangible example like that, that it doesn't have to be much that adds up to a lot.
And the cool thing about that is that he didn't have to start a nonprofit to do
Yeah.
it, right? A lot of times people feel like, oh, I'm gonna run my LLC and then I'm gonna start a nonprofit because I want to give back on this way. Well, actually, there's a way to bake that into your business model. And the thing that Suzanne just displayed there through that example is that from an investment standpoint, it opens up another revenue opportunity and it opens up a different pool of investors, right? Because now you have a certain group of investors that care about impact. So now the model is no longer about how many oil changes are you making, but it's how many kids have you taught around car care. And we know that that is a massive problem, right? So if you think about that, leading with that as your story, right? I created a business enterprise that allows kids to learn about car care through oil changes, right? Now it's not even about oil changes anymore. That's just that's the byproduct, right? Now you're measuring how many kids are learning about auto care, and now you could track that, how many go into careers, what career paths are in auto care. Maybe you're a mechanic, maybe you're a collision repairman. There's so many careers that can be built around that. And from an investment standpoint, I love that. And other impact investors love that because now we're looking at a larger outcome and a larger story. You can tell that equals more money for you, right? So instead of marketing yourself as I'm just like, what's the one? I'm trying to think, the seven something. They do the oil change in 7 minutes or 5 minutes or something. I can't remember which one it is. But instead of saying we're just like so and so, like Jiffy Lube, or we're just like so and so, now Take 5. That's the one. Yeah, that's where I go. Take 5. Just like so now instead of your story being like, oh yeah, we do oil changes just like Take 5. Now your story is we transform communities by teaching youth how to learn about the auto industry and car care through oil changes, right? That's that's going to pique somebody's interest in the elevator, right? That's the I'm riding in an airplane and I'm sitting next to a billionaire, didn't even know it, and you're telling this story, and this person's like, oh, that sounds interesting. How can we scale that? How can we, that's when you go talk to Sabrina at the North Texas, Foundation and say, how can we scale this and have one of these across North Texas, right? So from an investment standpoint, it opens up new investment opportunities, new revenue opportunities, and B, you can't afford not to, because as I mentioned, you have to have that social responsibility, because you owe that not just to your board members or your owners of the committee and your board and your advisors, but to the stakeholders of that patron your business, right? And so you have to keep them in mind, and your employees, right? If you look at the younger generations that are coming up, I think the stat was like 65%, upwards of 70% of millennials and younger prefer their business to have some social mission or care about some cause, right? They want to work at places that they know care about the communities that they come from, right? So that's going to be essential in attracting talent, right? How are you involving your employees in the community, right? Is there a service day? Is there opportunity for volunteerism? Like, what about your workplace makes you different? Because it's competitive, right? Once you start getting in the market, and I'll speak for myself and our organization, I'm competing with the same folks that are getting hired at Goldman Sachs, right? In investment banking, I'm competing for talent for the same folks. So what makes someone want to come work for Impact Ventures and change and transform the community versus, oh, I got my nice cubicle at Goldman Sachs, right? And so you have to think about the bigger story to your business and how it's driving revenue, and also how it's doing good in the community. And that's a story that investors want to hear. I think there's a growing group of investors that want to hear those stories.
That's fantastic, man. And yeah, and they had your back in the chat. They were saying take 5. They were trying to make sure you knew that
Oh
you
yeah.
got it out there. You understood it was take 5. No, that's perfect. But yeah, you talk about baking it into your business model, man. I think that was well said, because it's exactly what we're talking about. It doesn't have to be this separate arm in order to be given back to the community, or have that embedded, that it actually is a part of the DNA of the business in which you're doing, where you're still profiting, making money, but with that community lens in the way that that's going. So, but Gilberto, so you talked about being a part of the chamber. So I want to bring you in on that, on that lens of it. And how do you see social entrepreneurship strengthening networks and systems within the community?
Yeah, so I'll give an example. Actually, about 3 years ago, our chamber got awarded a grant by the city to revitalize a commercial neighborhood here in Northside. And it's a underinvested neighborhood. It's 70, 80% Hispanic. And it was a tough situation because there's not a lot of institutions here that can fund projects like that. But as a Chamber of Commerce residing in Northside, we felt like it was our responsibility to do something like this. And so we took on that project, and it started out by listening to the community. So we did surveys, we did focus groups. We actually did a study with ULI to understand the community needs. And we found out that the community wanted us to do commercial revitalization, but their biggest concern was displacement. We knew that if we helped out those businesses, taxes were going to go up for the community. And so we needed to make sure that we're tackling that issue as well. And then after doing more research and kind of listening a little bit more to the feedback, we also found out that the community wanted to make sure that the culture always was preserved here in the neighborhood, that their history was preserved, and that they made sure that there was opportunities for a lot of young professionals or young students. And so one thing led to another, but I think we're at the end of the 3 years now. We're about to complete our strategic plan. And what we realize is that what we're creating is actually a community development organization. And we didn't start out that way, but I think a lot of it was just understanding what the community really wanted. And now we understand that we have to make sure we help out those businesses. But through those conversations, we were working with the city to find different policies or advocate for different things that'll help out with some funding for them, making sure that the residents here have a pathway to home ownership, and then through it creating cultural events that are bringing everybody together. And so it was one of those things that I think it's a perfect example of social entrepreneurship. And Ben talked about a little bit, is really understanding what the community needs. And so it's a lengthy process, but now we have more than 50 community partners working on this project, including the city. And we were able to get some buy-in. So we're really excited about what the next 3 years are going to hold for this project. And but I think that's one of the best examples. I think you're right.
It's probably unmuted in order to tell you, but no, that's an absolutely great example, man, and truly appreciate you sharing that. And Sabrina, you talked about earlier that you just put this funding hat on, which is good with that. So with that funding hat that you now have on, if you would begin to talk about funding priorities, right? So like the priorities that funders have, how do you see this aligning this concept of social entrepreneurship, this information is gained from being able to go through these experiences? How does that align with funding priorities?
I think, as I mentioned before, being on this side, sitting on the grant committees, but also we've been doing the work of surveying and listening and convening for nonprofits. So as far as the community foundation, a lot of our funds are accounted for because they're donor advised and they really dictate how the funds go. But we are in a great position because we have a large pot of money that we can use to make grants. And so our grants are focused, but we have a couple of grant cycles that are focused on capacity building and organizational support. And a plug, because two of our grantees are on here with Community Frontline and the Forward Hispanic Chamber. And not to say that hey, both had participants in our social entrepreneurship program and just so happened to be a grantee. So
You hear me?
I'm just saying the connection. But I think the biggest thing in what we share is that just when you're going for funding, you have to make sure that you're telling the story as if the person on the other end has no idea about your organization, no idea about you, and this is their first time hearing about it. And so with that, you have to be able to really tell the story, right? Because I know when you're in the work, you're doing the work all the time, you don't really make a practice of is this clear, right? So making sure that whatever you're, whether that's a grant or a private grant or community foundation grant or whatever it is, having other eyes on it. Are we articulating who we are? What impact are we having in the community as a whole? What impact are we having on individuals or families or whatever your focus is, right? And being able to measure that. Like sometimes I think it trips some leaders up, or the smaller maybe organizations, on the data part, and making it too cumbersome or complicated. And really, you're collecting data if you know that if we do X, Y, and Z, then this many people are affected, or we can show that those that participated in maybe a program that we have, then they're exponentially impacted by, increasing earning potential or whatever the case may be. So being able to connect the dots to show not just the story, but you have to show the data. This is an investment for funders. So they want to know that if I invest this money into your organization or the work or the mission that you're doing, that there is going to be an increased impact. They are investing to increase the impact that you're already making, right? And so you want to make sure that you're sharing, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is the impact that we are able to show, that then connect how that funding will help them to do even more, right? And also, when we talk about sustainability, the reality of it is now that the climate has changed, it's uncertain. And so that whole piece about being innovative, the ability to pivot, showing the sustainability of your organization to show like, worst case scenario, if X, Y, and Z happen, we have a plan to pivot, or to a sustainability plan, essentially, to show how you want to handle if something goes awry, or whatever the case may be, how you want to make sure that you are able to continue the work. So I think it's really, again, the storytelling, showing your impact within the community, showing how your organization is going to be able to be sustainable, and how will this money, if invested into your organization or into the leadership or whatever, is going to grow that impact in the community.
Well, and that's a really good, part of social entrepreneurship is social enterprise. And what a lot of philanthropists will tell you is they want to be either the yeast or the icing. They don't want to be the cake, because you can't rely on that cake forever. And in theory, philanthropy is not supposed to be a continuous flow of money in perpetuity. It's really supposed to be kind of seed capital, or that yeast. I'm making you hungry, I know, because I talked about biscuits earlier and now I'm talking about cake. But and the icing, and that's it. And so that's the thing, is cake can be the social enterprise. How do you create revenue around a specific thing that you're doing? I'm working with a Fort Worth group that is in the next phase of the certificate program called DFW Rise, where they basically provide financial coaching for philanthropic people, but everybody needs financial coaching. Like when I was early on, I needed financial coaching. I still feel like I need financial coaching. So they're now figuring out, how do they go to existing businesses and help them with this thing they do better than anybody else, and actually charge people for it. And so now they're starting to go out and charge people and say, we can provide financial education and financial coaching for your employees. And it's a pain point for a lot of employers. And so they're figuring out how they create that revenue so that then they can actually funnel that extra revenue into their philanthropic ventures for the people who can't afford it or are not employed by these different companies. And so that's the other thing I would just encourage you to think about, is that this is social entrepreneurship is an opportunity to grow the pie. So we're not 100% reliant upon government dollars and philanthropic dollars, which will never be enough money to solve for all the issues, unfortunately, for all the things that we need. So we've got to be bringing in these market-based dollars.
And I'll add one other thing. One of the things that I appreciate about the program is just the highlighting about partnerships, right? I think we were challenged to find organizations that I guess would technically be competitors or not, but just have maybe aligned missions or not. And just because another part of it is knowing that funders want to see that you're not working in a silo, right? Because this is an ecosystem, right? And so, like, how are you partnering? Is the community behind you? Like, do you have support there? The listening and convening, are you really, because our grants are focused on nonprofits, but are you really a part of that community? So I would encourage anyone, just, find other, because that's one of the things that we receive feedback on. And the biggest need is just the ability to network and collaborate with other nonprofit leaders, regardless of size, diversity, whatever. The larger ones, the smaller ones, it was the same thing. And I would encourage that, because somebody may have already been where you're at. They can provide those tips or guidance, or it's also to encourage you to let you know you're not on the island by yourself. And there may be some synergy. Say, okay, like Community Frontline is a great quarterback in the community of being a conduit, providing resources and information, but also connecting people who may not otherwise be connected. And that could be that missing piece to help you go to the next level. So I think that networking connection is also a big piece of it, to show that you are a player within a community and you're not just in a silo, because it's an ecosystem. Like, we're all pieces of the puzzle. So
Indeed. And so that was a question that had actually popped up, and you answered it well. Thank you. Because she was asked, it was asked, is this for nonprofits only? I think they're talking about your funding. You talking about your fund, your organization's funding is focused towards nonprofits. So I can answer that. Benjamin, I think you wanted to get in real quick and say something in the end.
I was just going to add one piece around the funding piece, capital piece. Yeah. If you are for profit, right, looking for a loan or an investment, or if you're a nonprofit looking for a grant, right, or some type of philanthropic capital, I'll say this as someone who has brought an organization through, I would say, multiple chasms, right? Through a pandemic, as a startup, nonprofit, like that is not for the weak, to have an emerging startup in the pandemic and survive, right? 2 pandemics. I'll say that just know that capital follows capacity. And when I say that, sometimes leaders, whether you be a nonprofit or for-profit, they have this idea that if you give me the money, then I can go do the thing, right? And I know that's the most logical way to think of it. It's like, if I had all the money, then I can go do the thing, right? But it actually doesn't work like that at all. Like, money comes when there's impact that is there and it's been proven or it's been modeled. Money comes to allow that impact to grow, or that traction to grow. If you're a for-profit business, right? If you're a nonprofit. And when I say that, I mean, when let's say you do a program and you do it successfully and you're like, okay, I need funding so I can do the next one. Normally the funding comes in after to say, okay, how do you go from serving 12 clients to now serving 50 clients, right? So that's when I say, when funding meets capacity, or funding follows capacity, it's not the other way around, where you go to someone and say, hey, I'm going to do this thing, but I need your money to do it. No, you got to go do it first, and then the money's going to come grow it, right? That's how I look at investments. That's how most for-profit companies, that's how lenders, that's how everyone kind of looks at it, is like, what impact are you currently making, and how can my money help you grow that thing, right? And I think that's the sad but hard and fair truth, being in this space and being in this industry, is that to grow anything, you have to have some skin in the game. You have to have some commitment. You have to have, what can you do with nothing? Because what that tells me, if you can launch a program and stand up all this stuff with no resources, what could you do if I gave you a check for 50,000 or 100,000, right? Or what could you do with $1 million, right? That's what people want to see, right? You could get that $50,000 and completely fail, right? They want to know that, okay, you've done something, here's money to do more, right? Or to do more. So as you're thinking about your solutions, right? Start with a pilot, right? Keep your full-time job, start with a pilot or something that you can do on a smaller scale, so that you can prove out at least your hypothesis, maybe not impact, right? But at least prove out something that you started with a question, right? And that question could be a how might we question, like, how might we change XYZ, right? And this is a pilot to help test that. Funders love to see that you've tested something and you're thinking and you're learning and you're growing all at the same time, right? Investors do too. We want to work alongside our entrepreneurs. They're learning, hey, what are you learning from this campaign? What are you learning from this marketing thing that you're doing? What are you learning from this new product that you're trying to put out in the market, right? And so I just encourage everybody to take a learner's approach, to their work, because it's going to carry you so far in terms of learning is never ending, right? So it's not a destination. So you can never stop learning. So if you're never stop learning, that means your model and what you're doing is always going to be evolving and always going to be changing for the better. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so very much for that. And we are right at about that time, y'all. So grateful for the knowledge that's been shared. I want to wrap us up this way because I want to get some final thoughts from y'all as we get ready to close this out. And Benjamin, you kind of already started doing it, but so Sabrina, I'm gonna start here with you. Your final thought on as someone is thinking about the social entrepreneurship aspect. What's one piece of advice you would give someone about shifting into a social entrepreneurial mindset into their work?
Coming with an open mind. I think that's the biggest piece. And being willing to think outside of the box. I think that's the biggest thing. Thinking outside of the box to create innovative solutions to address the issues that, whether that's internally within your organization and trying to pivot your organization to be more social entrepreneur to resolve issues, or outside of that. But I think coming in open-minded and thinking outside of the box. So yeah.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. And Benjamin, you talked about that showcasing what you learned aspect. Would that be that piece of advice you would have, or is there another piece of advice you would offer for someone shifting into this mindset?
Yeah, definitely. I would hang my hat on that. Always being a learner, always knowing that there are new models or new ways. What you set out to achieve, it may be something completely different. You just gotta, like the old folks say, you gotta keep on living. You know, but
Indeed.
it always, like you said, if you keep an open mind, like Sabrina said, and always be a learner, like you said, the what you think and the problem that you think you're going to solve, it could be something much bigger. You could be limiting yourself by trying to define what it is that you want to build. When just listening and being a learner is going to guide you to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And Gilberto, I'll kick it to you, man. Same thing. What's that one piece of advice you might have?
Yeah, I've always been a connector, but definitely I do it a lot more now after the program. I think just being able to plant those seeds everywhere, you never know what'll come out of it. But a lot of times that'll come back to your organization and it'll help you out. So always being a connector, I think it helps out everybody. It helps out the community, but you also figure out how to overcome or identify problems in the community and fix them, help fix them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Suzanne, definitely want to end this part off with you. Any advice that you would have for someone that's taking this on?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I believe everything that they just said. I think all of those things are true. I think the thing I would say and lean into is ditch the superhero complex. We as social entrepreneurs just there's no proof that says a lone person can do it all in a community. And if they do, they burn out very easily. And so what the certificate does is we start with learning and we end with community because as you see, everybody has come together and they graduate with 50 other people who are now like-minded, have the same learnings, and they're all deeply connected to each other and their missions. And I see it already where they go to conferences together and they hang out together and they, pitch ideas to each other and they're sending things to each other. And so it's not something where we want you guys to do social issues alone. You have to do it in community and you get that much more exponential value when you join a community like this and you have other people who help you kind of raise your game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, with that being the case, look, y'all, this is what we're trying to tell you. This is all about changing the game, changing the mindset and the way that we're doing things, right? And we want to be able to help along this journey. So we're telling you, apply, go to communityfrontline.com/changemakers, apply because we're going to take 40 folks and we're going to all get in here together and we are going to change the way things are done here locally in Tarrant County by you and being able to focus in on the things that you are able to give. So, the application process will be open through October 30th. So go ahead and share that out with folks. Go ahead and get your own application in. We want to see you be a part of this. Once accepted, we're beginning this off in 2026 in January. You'll be able to do, we'll have our cohort where we'll do once a month, January to September, where you'll have this intensive. You'll be able to learn all this information and you'll be able to have to figure out how to make that mindset shift, how to grow the scale, make the most impact for your community. And so we definitely want to see everyone be a part of that. But the biggest thing is that we really want everyone to understand here. And Suzanne alluded to it earlier when she was presenting. It's the business aspect and what that's going to look like for you as well. But we're talking about putting boots on the ground. We're talking about putting our money where our mouth is. When you sign up for this and you accepted into this cohort, that community frontline sauce, you're going to be doing projects where you're actually putting things into action where those 40 folks within this cohort are immediately making impact into the Tarrant County Fort Worth community that we're doing. So, and so that hadn't always been done in all the previous sessions that we've had that's been done at different locations. But here in Fort Worth, in Tarrant County, partnership with Suzanne, a partnership with UTA Fort Worth. Thank you for the right here, y'all. We're gonna be doing actual change making stuff on the ground with some social impact projects as well. So thank you all for joining us here tonight. We deeply appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you be a part of what's to come in this cohort. This information will be on our website. You'll be able to see this on our social media platforms as well. Thank you for being a part of Community Frontline. Thank you, wonderful panelists, for your time and your attention and your expertise. And we'll see y'all on the front line. Thank you so very much.